Welcome to the Village Vision podcast, where community collaboration and care converge. I'm Dr. Crystal Morrison, and I'm honored to be your host on this incredible journey. As a firm believer in the power of a united village, I'm thrilled to bring you inspiring stories, research, and projects that break down barriers in family and child care. Through heartfelt conversations with experts, advocates, and those with lived experiences, we'll showcase the transformative impact of collective support. So join me on the Village Vision podcast as we explore the remarkable collaborations that lead to better outcomes, foster a sense of community, and inspire action to improve care for ourselves and everyone around us. On today's episode, I'm here with Jeremy Rochford. Life and relationship coach for neurodiverse men and families. With a BA in communication studies and over 20 years of conflict resolution experience, Jeremy is no stranger to the art of problem-solving communication. With two neurodivergent children and his own later in life autism diagnosis, he specializes in helping husbands and families. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. So I definitely want to talk about your work with coaching your clients and the work you're doing with NeuroFam.
And, the way that kind of manifested was when it was suggested that our son was on the spectrum, it really kind of hit us out of nowhere because we didn't have any history. We didn't have anyone in the family. Like we had such little, like our only example was I was in a band with a guy who had a son who's autistic. Like that's all I knew.
Okay.
And so when you get that information, it's kind of like, whoa, you get sort of taken aback and you kind of go through all those stages of like, I don't know. And then there's the grief and the denial and all of that. And then you start to advocate and you start to see like, oh, wow, okay, this really actually this is describing our child, but also this isn't a death sentence. Like this just means that this is a different way of doing life, different than we anticipated, but not bad, just different.
Right.
And I looked at the back at that sort of 4-year arc between their diagnosis and my diagnosis, where it was like, man, I wish someone would have had a positive way to support the process. I wish there would have been some positivity around this instead of the Facebook groups of life's over or you're never going to reach your dreams now. And it's just like, hold up, this isn't a deficiency. It's just simply a different way of looking at things.
Right.
And because my wife and I have always had different jobs, I have work that typically runs on a Mac and she has work that typically runs on a PC. That whole mindset of, well, you can't run Microsoft Word through a Mac automatically, but if you want Microsoft to run a Mac, you can make it happen, right? And like that whole mindset is what really took over how we approached autism. One of the things that I realized and got affirmed early on was that there are a lot of women in this space who speak positively of it, but there weren't a lot of strong male voices. And it was suggested to me that if this was a space I wanted to get into or was considering, that it would be helpful because quite often, and even with my own struggles, I saw it in real life, it's quite often the male in the family who struggles most to accept the diagnosis in their children. And it's also the male who statistically is genetically the one who is kind of the autistic in the family because of the ratio. And once I got my diagnosis, honestly, it was like a cheat code. Like I go back to Contra, like old school Nintendo, right? Like 99 lives, right? Like, but once I got my diagnosis, I could look back on the past 40 years of my life and go, this all makes sense. It didn't justify some of my behaviors, but it completely explained them. And whenever I was able to bring that into my marriage got so much better. Because now, if we had an argument, because we're human, we're not always going to agree. But if I felt the need to walk away, I could explain I'm dysregulated. I need 5 to 10 minutes to get calm. I want to come back and talk about this. And I can say that now because I know it's a dysregulation issue. Whereas before it was, oh, you always avoid situations. Can't, not a man. You
Ah,
can't handle the problem. And
um, what has been so cool about the way they share and experience the world now is that, they were at our house, we had dinner, we had friends over, we're talking and chatting. And they said, after about, I don't know, an hour, 2 hours, and I may have shared this with you, they said, I'm going to take a sensory break in the living room. And I was like, that's freaking fantastic.
right?
Like we're this group of adults who have been hanging out together socially. They need a timeout to go and sit calmly in the living room with headphones on while we continue chatting. But there was nothing abnormal about that because there was this level of awareness.
It's one of the challenges that individuals on the spectrum have is social cues and black and white thinking. I'm right, you're wrong. So if I just tell you more aggressively, you'll understand my point, right? And so walking people through the reality that there might be a different perspective on this conversation. And there are sects of people where the gray area is their black and white. And really coaching people on the art of conversation and the art of relationships in terms of a lot of autistic individuals are transactional, like a kid on the team. We were, because I'm so open about the autism, we got to learn there's another kid on the team who's autistic.
Mhm.
And for the first few games, like we didn't know. And so the other coaches were kind of treating him and coaching him like a neurotypical, right?
Sure.
And because he knows absolutes, he kept getting out of position, right? Where it's like, well, stand here. And it's like, well, no, don't stand there. And
Yeah.
he's like, well, you just told me to stand here, right? Like, well, it's like, we'll stand there until the ball moves, right? So once we knew he was on the spectrum, I was able to coach him in a way that I would coach my son. Well, now we've got 2 games left in the season. He's the second leading scorer on the team
Yeah.
because I was able to relate the game to him the way that I know his mind would see it. And
Yeah.
so now, hopefully, his life has been impacted. And the coaches I work with, their lives have been impacted because now they're going to go into every season going, okay, if I see these traits, I'm going to wonder.
Yeah.
And hopefully 5, 10, 20 years from now, we'll be so open with it that we can coach these kids in a different way so they can still be a part of the team and also have as much enjoyment as they're having now.
Mhm.
So I will leave the kid's name out, but the other autistic
Yeah.
kid, second on the team in scoring, like they're thriving in an NT. Like there's no
Yeah.
difference except for there's a difference.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's where we're getting. It's a slow roll. And I think you people like you and I and everyone you talk to, like we're trying to bring some positivity to a fairly dark space. But the more we're open about it, the more we enjoy the humans as the humans and not the
Mhm.
problem society wants to make them out to be, the more the positivity around the diagnosis will spread, the more acceptable it'll be, and the more we'll have these little decoder rings, the more we'll
Yeah.
have these translation books because it won't be so kept distance because we can't talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'll share a quick story. I was thinking about while you were talking about your son and goalie and the other little guy. So my oldest son played t-ball and
Mm.
baseball for a couple of years, and
Help them love and appreciate where autism is in their life, whether it's through their own journey or their kids' journey or both. Because our thought process is if we can make the adults better, then that's going to help make the kids better. And the healthier everyone is, the better we'll be as a society. So our goal is to not solve anything. Our goal is not to fix anything. Our goal is to take where you're already at and just simply make it better.
all right. Well, thank you for joining us on this episode of the Village Vision podcast. I hope you found inspiration and valuable insights from our conversation today. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate, leave a review, share, all of the things. But thank you. Thank you for being a part of the Village Vision podcast. Take care, and let's keep shining a light on the power of community collaboration in care.